I'm Keltie Maguire, and you're listening to the Kids Are Childfree Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Kids Are Childfree Podcast. Today, you've got me. We're doing a solo episode. I know it's been a while since we've done one of these, and I have to thank you because the feedback on these solo episodes is always so positive. And I also want to say, if you ever have ideas for future solo episodes, what you might want to hear, don't hesitate to reach out on Instagram or ping me an email, because I'm always looking for ideas in terms of what you would like me to share on as it relates to this kids or child-free choice. So for today, I'm going to be sharing 4 different beliefs or ideas that I had that I needed to shift or change in order to make my kids or child-free choice. And while there were certainly important parts of this process, this decision of getting clear on things that lived outside of these beliefs, I don't want to make the implication that these beliefs alone are what allowed me to decide, but I actually really did need to sort of clear some mental or emotional space, if you will, by rethinking some of the ideas I had about this decision. And those are the things that kind of created, we could say, the right conditions under which I was then able to make a decision. So the first belief that I had, and this is one that I hear from so many of you that you also often have, and part of the reason is we are told this, and that belief is that we will just know what the right decision is, right? There's sort of this implication that there will be a light bulb moment, that there will be this singular kind of point in time in which clarity dawns on us. And while I don't want to dismiss that may be the experience or has been the experience for some people or some people that you know, if you have been on the fence for a long time, if you see real merits in both paths, if part of you is being pulled one way and part of you is being pulled the other, I think we need to ask ourselves, is it realistic that all of a sudden, out of the blue, some sort of moment of clarity will arrive? And when we believe that this moment is just going to magically appear, we may be waiting for an indefinite period of time, right? And if you've been grappling with this for a long time now, or whether it's a short time, you're probably kind of thinking, okay, can I just get on with it? The other thing is, it becomes almost disempowering when we think that this decision is something that will happen to us rather than being something that we can enact ourselves. It's like we have this thought that it's going to be thrust upon us as opposed to being an agent of this decision, which I don't know about you, but I personally think the latter is going to be a more empowering perspective, that actually I'm the one who gets to decide this. This is not something that's just going to magically awaken inside of me. So coming to this realization, and for me, I've shared this before, but I was really grappling with this choice for probably about 10 years, from the time I met my now husband, Chris, to my mid-late 30s, when I recognized I'm just gonna, I think, have to figure this out. Having some ownership around this decision, saying I'm actually going to do the work to figure this out for myself, that was something that was really important for me on this journey, as opposed to just kind of waiting and hanging out. Yeah, sure, I was grappling with it. I mentioned, I was on the fence for 10 years, but I wasn't actually being an active participant in the decision and really committing myself to getting it figured out. Okay, the other idea that I had to question, this belief I had to let go of, was the fact that I believe there was a right and wrong choice with this decision. And this showed up for me, and it may be similar for you, in a couple different ways. So one, I think there is still an overarching idea for a lot of us, especially those of us who are women, that there is an inherently right and wrong choice to choose in this kids or child-free dilemma. And let's be honest, what we are told from culture and society and in our schools and perhaps our parents and any religion that we're part of, that the right thing to do as a woman is to have kids. Kid or kids. I was going to say kid. That's why I articulated that kind of funny, but probably go forth and multiply a lot. That being a parent is the best, highest, most fulfilling, most meaningful, purposeful thing that we can do. And even if you have arrived at a point where you're like, okay, cool, people are choosing to be child-free, and that is a totally valid path. And maybe you have respect or admiration for people either in your life or that you see in the media, maybe someone like myself who's chosen the child-free path. I want you to just check in with yourself and say, do you really believe that applies to you? And P.S., it should apply to you. It's totally valid and okay to choose to be child-free. But I think for me, I was holding myself to a little bit of a different, quote, higher standard that, well, I should be doing the right thing. Again, there it is again, and having kids. And then the other way this showed up for me was the idea that we talk about sort of, hoping that this answer is going to magically arise from within ourselves. And hey, like as a sidebar, I think doing the inner work and looking within ourselves and looking for answers that may reside there can be a really important and powerful way of exploring this decision. But again, that's something that like we are a participant in as opposed to just like hoping will show up. Anyways, back to this idea about right and wrong. I think I had this idea that like there was only one right choice for me and that I magically had to try and determine what that was. That I don't know like how I was going to do that, but essentially that there was something written in the stars and I needed to discern what that was. And as time went on, and as a really important part of my journey, I had to recognize that actually maybe both of these choices could be right for me in different ways. That also by living out one choice or another, I would be making it right for myself. I would learn to grow into motherhood if that was a choice I had chosen. And, probably if I would have chosen to be parent, I would have said like, yeah, that's the right choice for me. I think most people we have that sort of confirmation bias, or I don't want to call it a justification, but like it makes sense to validate what we've chosen. And of course, now that I've chosen to be child-free and to stick to that path, I've made that path be most right for me. This is something that was articulated, and I've heard it shared a number of times from her, but someone by the name of Dr. Ellen Langer, and apologies if I'm pronouncing her last name right or wrong, it might be Langer. In any case, Dr. Ellen, Langer, of Harvard. She's a psychologist. She's a mindfulness expert. I've heard her talk on numerous occasions about the fact that so many of us are fixated on making the right decision in life, and that actually we need to make a decision and then we make that decision right. And the idea of making a decision right is about giving ourselves or allowing ourselves to recognize that we get to shape and shift what our lives look like. Like, of course, yes, there are going to be certain aspects of either path that will live outside of our control, but we can make choices within each individual decision, whether that's being a parent or staying child-free, that make it right for us by enlisting support if we choose to be a parent, by creating community if we're choosing to be child-free, by filling our lives with those things that are important to us, by living in accordance with our values. Like those are ways that we can make any choice right. And so for you listening, if you're thinking like there is a definitive right and wrong choice, either for me or again, like sort of collectively speaking or societally speaking, I want you to just question that and try and emphasize the idea that perhaps both paths can be right in a certain way. It might create a little bit more sort of looseness around this decision, as opposed to feeling really pinned in by the idea that like it's super rigid and there's only one right and there's only one wrong. And again, your task is to somehow magically figure out which is which. Okay, this is a little bit similar to the idea that there is a right and wrong choice, but I still feel like it's worth noting. So we're going to call this belief number 3 that I needed to shift or change. And that was the idea that there's only one path to a happy life. I know, and for me, this was a big reminder I had to give myself in order to make my decision, that I have found happiness, contentment, fulfillment, joy, pleasure, whatever positive emotions you want to consider in different circumstances and seasons of my life. Like I have had, and don't tell Chris, I'm just joking here, but I've had partners in the past, boyfriends, people I've dated, long-term relationships that have been really joyful and fulfilling to me. I have had different jobs and businesses aside from this one that I found seasons of enjoyment in. I have lived in different parts of the world. I love living in Vancouver. I lived there for a long time. I spent 14 months living in Sydney, Australia, which was just like absolutely magical. And I really love living in Munich. And so I myself am evidence of the fact that actually there are different paths that one can take to live a happy life. And If you struggle to find examples of this in your own life, that you maybe have had contentment, fulfillment, joy, etc., in different situations, in different seasons of your life, you can also look to other people and do you actually really believe that there is only one way to be happy in this world? Let's consider different cultures, different societies, people living in an urban environment versus living in more of a suburban environment. We can consider people having different kinds of jobs, people who are self-employed, people who are doing physical labor, people who are doing knowledge work, whatever it is. Of course, it doesn't make sense that only certain paths can make one happy. There's so many ways to find joy in this life. And so for myself, really reminding myself that again, and this kind of goes back to the idea that there can be different right paths, that I could very well find joy, happiness, fulfillment, whatever we're going for here, in both paths. Again, that really created a lot of freedom for me to say, okay, if I believe I can be happy both being child-free and being a parent, how much less sort of strain and pressure would that put on my decision? And hey, listen, I can hear you saying it right now, all the way over the internet, over the sound waves of this podcast. Well, but I don't know if I can be happy either way. I want you to think about yourself. Again, the resilience that you have, the ability that I know is inherent within you to make different situations good or okay, to get through challenges, whatever's been thrust your way. Are you going to allow this decision, whichever decision it is, and by the way, it may not also be a decision, whatever may befall you. I know sometimes we really want to have kids and that's just not in the cards for us for whatever reason. Are you going to allow that to be a determinant as to whether or not you have a happy life? Because for me, I had to look at myself, I had to look at my relationship, I had to look at my wonderful partner, Chris, and say, are we the kind of people who are going to allow this decision to therefore determine our level of joy for the rest of our lives? Absolutely not. Of course, I can find happiness with kids. Will it be easy? Probably not, right? Raising kids isn't. Is it as well suited to me perhaps as another path, in this case being child-free? Maybe not. But allowing myself to recognize sure, of course, there are many people who are finding joy as a child-free person or finding joy as a parent. Why would I be an exception to that? Okay, so that's belief number 3. Belief number 4 is that I am a victim of my decisions. And maybe you're recognizing by now, but these all really layer and kind of connect with one another in different ways. In a way, I feel like I'm stating the same thing in 4 different ways. I'm not sure what the underlying message is exactly. Probably that you get to be an agent in your own life, that you're the one who's going to get to at least have some say in terms of how your future is going to look, no matter what you no matter what you choose. That's probably what the take-home message is. But this 4th belief was that I'm a victim of my decisions. Life's going to happen to me. Yeah, I will choose, but then ultimately it's going to be what it is. And I'm either going to be lonely, miserable, unhappy as a child-free person. This is what people like to tell us. Or I'm going to be, overwhelmed and challenged and bogged down in motherhood. both amazing paths, right? When we're stuck, both options can feel like terrible choices. I'm not going to be a victim of my decisions. Okay. Now, this isn't to say that challenges won't happen, that there are things that will be outside of our control. But the idea that this choice is just going to happen to me and that I have no say in the matter is patently false, right? As I mentioned before, we have decisions within a given path. So if we consider parenthood, we can consider the values with which we want to parent. We can negotiate and discuss and plan with our partner how we want that balance in terms of shared load and parenting or what have you to look like. We can decide how we want to raise our kids. We can decide, and I realize some of these things, of course, we require or need a level of privilege to be able to do this. The forthcoming example being one, but we can maybe decide what kind of school our kids go to. We can decide which city or country we raise our kids in. Again, this may not be available for all of you, but there are going to be micro and macro decisions along the way that are going to help shape what this experience is. And it's the same with being child-free, right? I look at my life right now and it's, if I'm lacking in, say, the community that I want of like-minded child-free people, I can go out and find and create that community. Does it mean that it's always going to be easy? No. But is it possible? Absolutely. I can decide that if I don't like the way my life is looking or feeling, that I can change certain things about that. And so one of the most empowering questions I love to ask myself, not just with this kids or child-free choice, but with any circumstance I find myself in life, especially when I feel like I'm losing a grip on, like I don't have a say in the matter, basically, is what is within my control here? There's so much that's not within our control. I'm not here to say that you have every ounce of control in how your life looks. But even in the most dire circumstances, we can say, what's within my control here? How we respond, how we choose to view the situation, the attitude with which we go through life, the people we surround ourselves with. And so with this decision, recognizing that and really deciding like, I'm not going to be a victim to this decision. I can live a great life. As mentioned, I can lead a happy life. I can find joy in either path, that I can choose to make this right, that I'm the one who gets to make this decision. You can see how these all tie together. That was a huge, important part of what allowed me to arrive at what ultimately I chose, which in my case, as you probably know listening, was to be child-free. Okay, I hope this was helpful for you today. Short and sweet episode. Again, would love your feedback on future solo episodes, what you'd like to hear from me on those. I got to say, I have so many amazing guests that I sometimes feel like there's no time for me to do solo episodes. I have to talk to all the different people. But based on the response that I get for these and the fact that a lot of you feel like seemingly that they are helpful, of course, I would love to create more of them. Your wish is my command. So again, just drop me a DM over on Instagram or send me an email and we'll see what we can do. All right, so quick recap. Again, those 4 beliefs or ideas that I needed to shift or let go of in order to make my kids or child-free choice was number 1, like, there's probably not going to be a light bulb moment. No one's coming to save me. I'm going to have to make this decision. Number 2, that there is an inherently right or wrong choice about whether to have kids or be child-free. Again, whether that's like collectively speaking across the board or whether that's for me as an individual. Number 3 was the idea that there is only one path to a happy life. And number 4, we had to, I don't know why I said we, that was weird. We, meaning you as well, should hopefully do this. We can't be victim to our decisions, right? We need to recognize that we get to have some choice in our life in terms of how we show up and how we view things and the decisions that we make and where we put our time and energy. And so don't feel like whatever you choose is just something that's happening to you. You get to be an agent in this decision. This is a word I've used a lot, an agent of change in the kids or child-free choice and how your life looks and how you choose what that path will be. All right, that is all for me today. I will, as we leave, remind you that it would be a great help. I would feel very grateful. And I know any fellow fence sitters who are trying to navigate this decision will feel the same way. If you would leave a rating or review on either Apple Podcasts, where you can leave both a star rating as well as some kind words in the form of a review, or on Spotify, where you can leave a star rating. This is one big way in which the podcast gets discovered. It gets shown to new people when they're scrolling through their podcast app. So if you've not already done so and you find this podcast valuable, please leave a rating or review either on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. All right, that is all from me. I hope you have yourself a beautiful day, and we will be back next week with another guest episode.